Engine failure.
Chinese woman throws coins into plane engine for good luck. A woman delayed a Shanghai flight for several hours after she had the oh-so-Chinese idea of tossing coins into the airplane's engine for good luck. According to a passenger, the 80-year-old woman tossed 9 coins at the engine of China Southern Airlines flight CZ380 while she was boarding on the tarmac. Unfortunately, one of the coins found its way into the engine. Officials were forced to evacuate almost 150 passengers from the flight bound for Guangzhou, while the maintenance crew checked for any damage to the engine. The old woman, who was traveling with family, was detained by police. She told authorities she was praying for a safe flight. What's that old Chinese proverb about throwing money in engines? Oh, yeah, there isn't one.
Airbus plane engine falls apart over the Atlantic. An Air France flight en route from Paris to Los Angeles was forced to make a slight detour when one of its engines disintegrated over the Atlantic on Saturday. The Airbus A380 was just east of Greenland, carrying 496 passengers and 24 crew members when one of its engines experienced a serious failure. According to passengers, there was a loud boom and then a lot of shaking. Luckily, the fast-acting pilots quickly shut the engine down and were able to stabilize the plane in under 30 seconds. The plane flew for about an hour on 3 engines before arriving at Goose Bay Airport in eastern Canada. 2 777s were eventually sent from Montreal to pick up the passengers and take them the rest of the way to LA. The cause of the engine failure is still unknown and currently being investigated.
Singapore Airlines flight lands on runway and catches fire. During the early morning hours of June 27th, a Singapore Airlines flight to Milan found itself in a scary situation. Roughly 2 hours into the journey, the 222 passengers and 19 crew members on board the Boeing 777 were notified by the pilot of an engine oil warning message, which would force the plane to have to turn back to Singapore. As the pilot was making an emergency landing at Changi Airport, suddenly the plane's right engine burst into flames. Fire crews rushed to douse the fire as passengers could only watch from their seats, trapped on board. Many have been reported as saying they felt they were about to die. Luckily, within minutes, the fire was extinguished, with no injuries to report. Passengers safely disembarked from the plane and were put on a new flight to Italy a few hours later.
Southwest flight makes emergency landing after engine blows. Southwest Flight 3472 narrowly avoided tragedy thanks to its pilot's quick response to a mid-air blast. The plane was 25 minutes into a flight from New Orleans to Orlando on Saturday when a loud explosion erupted from the left engine. Smoke was coming from the ruined engine, its metal parts flapping in the wind while the plane shook violently. The plane began falling, and panic set in as oxygen masks deployed inside the cabin. The aircraft was tilting dangerously to one side and descending rapidly, dropping 20,000 feet in less than 10 minutes. Startled passengers were crying and screaming and feared it was the end. But the crew remained calm, and pilots soon managed to stabilize the plane. The Boeing 737 aircraft made an emergency landing in Pensacola minutes later, where the 99 passengers and 5 crew members disembarked safely. Southwest Airlines has yet to specify what caused the engine failure, but is working with the Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board to investigate.
Singapore Airlines flight sucks baggage container into engine at Changi Airport. A Singapore Airlines Boeing 777 plane sucked in an empty baggage container into one of its engines at Singapore Changi Airport last week. Flight SQ421 had arrived in Singapore from Mumbai on the afternoon of December 19th. The plane was taxiing toward the gate when an LD3 container next to the jetway got sucked into one of its engines. Passengers were about to leave the plane to catch another flight when the accident happened. According to Singapore Airlines, no injury were reported on the ground or on board the plane. Police are currently investigating the incident.
Air India flight lands safely in Newark Airport after its left engine catches fire. An India-bound flight was forced to return to New Jersey's Newark Liberty International Airport Sunday afternoon when its engine caught fire. Air India Flight 114 was departing from Newark to Mumbai. The Boeing 777-300ER was carrying 313 people, including 18 business class passengers, 274 in economy class, and 21 crew members. The plane departed from Newark at 4:35 p.m. Shortly after takeoff, the pilot reported the left engine of the plane had caught fire. The aircraft landed safely at 5:05 p.m. with just one engine. The rough landing caused multiple blown tires, but no injuries were reported. Airport officials initially stated the malfunction was due to a bird strike, but later retracted the statement. The exact cause of the engine fire is still being investigated.
Engine failure forces Cathay Pacific flight to make emergency landing in Bali. Cathay Pacific is currently investigating a number 2 engine defect on a diverted flight late Thursday night. Flight CX-170 left Perth just before midnight en route to Hong Kong when it encountered engine trouble near the coast of Bali. The plane, an Airbus 330, has 2 engines and can fly up to 4 hours on just one. Passengers reported hearing a loud bang as the plane started shaking and cabin lights went dark. Some passengers reportedly saw sparks, flames, and smoke coming from an engine, though the airline says this was a light signaling engine failure, not a fire. The plane made an emergency landing at Bali's Denpasar Airport around 3:35 a.m. Fire services met the aircraft on arrival. The airline explained there was no fire and no one was harmed. 254 passengers and 13 crew members were on board the flight.
Singapore Airlines jet plunges 13,000 feet after both engines fail. Singapore Airlines is investigating an incident on Saturday night in which one of its aircraft en route to Shanghai dropped 13,000 feet after losing power to both engines during bad weather. The Singapore Airlines Airbus A330 bound for Shanghai departed Singapore with 182 passengers and 12 crew on board at 5:35 p.m. local time on Saturday. The plane was flying through a huge storm at 39,000 feet when it experienced a rapid descent of 13,000 feet before regaining control at an altitude of 26,000 feet. The plane touched down in Shanghai at 10:45 p.m. local time without further incident. Post-flight checks of the plane in Shanghai revealed no anomalies. The Air Accident Investigation Bureau of Singapore will be investigating the incident.
JAL plane forced to make emergency landing. A Japanese passenger plane bound for northern Hokkaido was forced to turn back after its right engine suddenly failed mid-flight. The Japan Airlines Boeing 777 jetliner left Tokyo's Haneda Airport at 3:30 p.m., carrying 228 passengers and 11 crew. The plane was scheduled to land at New Chisote Airport in Hokkaido at 5 p.m. However, shortly into the flight, the aircraft's right engine shut down. The pilots turned back and landed the plane at Haneda Airport around 4:50 p.m. No injuries were reported, and the cause of the engine shutdown is still under investigation.
Spirit Airlines plane spews parts after Detroit takeoff. The FAA is looking into why a Spirit Airlines plane was spewing parts after a Detroit airport takeoff on Monday night. The Spirit flight from D-Town to Hotlanta was forced to return to Detroit Metro Airport after experiencing engine failure. The plane was able to land safely without incident, but unfortunately dumped a bunch of engine pieces into the yards of Detroit residents. The FAA sent investigators to look into what went wrong and to examine the recovered engine parts. The investigation should be concluded in the coming weeks. According to one passenger on the flight, the plane was at about 5,000 feet when there was a large bang that caused the aircraft to shake and shudder. The passenger said the right engine was on fire, sparking, and losing pieces. And here we thought it was just Spirit trying to save money by getting rid of plane engines.
Report finds engine casing breach in British Airways Las Vegas fire. A report on the British Airways plane that caught fire at a Las Vegas airport found that a key component of the engine had multiple breaches. The engine casing of the British Airways Boeing 777-200's left General Electric GE90 85B engine was found to have multiple breaches. The breaches were found in the area around the high-pressure compressor, a key component that's designed to never break. An engineering expert told the BBC that the high-pressure compressor spool may have suffered a fatigue crack. Parts of the spool flew out of the engine and were found on the runway. It's not yet known whether the breach was a one-off problem, or if it could potentially arise in similar engines.
Fire on domestic Malaysian flight. A domestic flight in Malaysia suffered an engine fire early Wednesday morning. A Malindo Air flight headed from Subang to Terengganu landed safely March 26th after one of its engines caught fire. The plane took off just after 7:30 a.m. on March 26th, and the passenger list included the Terengganu football team. As the plane ascended to around 2,100 meters, an engine caught fire. The pilot immediately responded by activating the fire suppression system and turning off the engine. The plane then turned around and made a safe landing at Sultan Abdul Aziz Shah Airport in Subang. No one was injured in the incident. One of the football players on board, Faiz Subudi, managed to photograph the engine fire, and his photo has been widely shared on the internet.
NASA researchers have unlocked a mystery of power failure in jet engines at high altitude. At high altitude, humid air is filled with tiny ice crystals. Turbofan engines are a hot environment that cause the ice particles to slightly melt, creating enough liquid friction to stick to stationary compressor blades and accumulate. Ice accumulation can distort airflow, and ice build can snap off, damaging engine parts. This can cause power loss, damage to the physical parts of the turbofan engine, or a flameout. NASA says it is now working on how the problem can be solved.